Hey guys, welcome to group. Have you ever felt like life was just constantly rushing? No matter how hard you try, you're running behind. It could be work, it could be family, finances, just life in general. I know I've definitely been in that kind of place in parts of my life. And there was a moment where recently, that hurry, that push, that feeling of overwhelmed, and it hit me. Man, this just isn't how God designed us to live. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, and that's the pace. Like, I think God designs our pace. And I think we can all relate to this. So week 3 on Timeout is all about, like, are we rushing through life or are we following God at the pace that He wants us to? Because when we rush, we always feel we're behind, we're missing out, we have so much more to do. And so we're just go, go, go. And then we have this idea of like, well, someday when it slows down, then what? But what if someday never happens, right?
Right.
So if we're always rushing, and if you're always plowing forward, the reality is you're probably not running at God's pace. You're running at your own. So what if we actually hit timeout and decide, can we run at God's pace in life, not our own?
Yep. So this whole series, we've actually been diving in, trying to learn how to slow down, embrace God's rest. And so we've learned about Jesus being that source of rest, that invitation He gives us. We've learned that we saw that being in His presence brings us rest. Today, we're looking at how do we let God set the pace for our lives. And so the truth is, if we don't trust in His leadership, we're just going to keep running ourselves into the ground.
Yeah. So we're going to actually dive into a very common passage again, that is Psalm 23. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this, and if you didn't even know what Psalm 23 was, you've probably been like a funeral, and they read Psalm 23 at the funerals all the time. That is like the Good Shepherd, right? The Lord is my shepherd. Yep. That's the Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. And the problem is we read it at funerals, but it's really not a psalm for the dying. It's a psalm for the living.
That's so good.
And so how we live is we follow Jesus and we follow our shepherd. And so I want us to dive into this passage, and we did, on Sunday. And how can we allow Him to be our shepherd?
Yeah.
He leads the way.
Very much. So this is actually a cool psalm because it's written by King David, who is, of course, a shepherd himself when he was younger. And now he's this older man, and he's looking back at his life, and he's using this imagery of God as the good shepherd himself. He's recognizing as the sheep, and so he's that reversal role. So make sure you take time, read this psalm today, because it's really going to speak into, that's what this message is centered around.
Yeah, so we're going to focus really on just the first 3 verses, because the first 3 verses is about the pace. It's about God's leadership in your life. And a shepherd needs to lead the pace and the direction for the sheep. And you're going to see sometimes he's saying, hey, slow down by the waters, or hey, let's go, go, go. And the sheep will just wander and do whatever they want. And so just like us, right? We're going to do what we want to do, but what we want to do is not always the best thing to do. So when the shepherd is Jesus and He leads us, then He's going to lead us the way that we need to go. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a peaceful pace.
Yeah.
So if we're feeling stressed out and full of anxiety, the shepherd leads us to a pace of peace. And letting God lead us is better than us pushing forward on our own.
That's so good. So let's start breaking this down like we did on Sunday. The first thing we talked about is that it's the Lord is my shepherd, which I think is such an important component when we read this. It's that acknowledgement that it's mine. David here starts out by saying, the Lord's my shepherd, I've got all that I need. And it's really both a declaration and a decision. He's declaring that everything I have, everything I need comes from God. I'm relying upon Him. But it's also this decision that I'm not going to chase after things that He's not provided. I'm not going to try and do this push and this rush for other things. I have what I need because it comes from God.
Yeah, so when you're saying He's my shepherd, what we're really learning is trust.
Yeah, that's good.
And when we trust God, when we trust His leadership, let me say it this way. When you trust, you're probably not going to have to rush because you're going to follow.
Yeah.
And so instead of pushing forward, we're following His leading. And so I just think it's so important that God is so good. He's such the good shepherd. And sometimes He's looking at us and going, hey, slow down, trust me, follow my lead.
Yeah, that's so good. Because again, like we've talked about, It's the sheep don't set the pace, the shepherd does. And so when we try to be our own shepherd, I think that's when we end up with that exhaustion. We end up tired. We end up burnout, and we're chasing things that we were never meant to carry or meant to chase.
Yeah. And I do think you just mentioned some of these, like there's warning signs. Like if you're wondering, is he my shepherd? Am I really trusting God? Then if you're always feeling rushed, then you might not be following the shepherd. Or if you're feeling restless, you might not be following the shepherd. Or if you're struggling with comparison and who's got what, and I got to go after that. I've got to go. You might not be following. It's like a good redneck joke. You might not be
following the shepherd if.
Yeah. So, hey, that is like, is there some warning signs? Those are good conversations for you in group today, is what are some warning signs? And maybe we're feeling some of them.
Yeah, very much. So that led us to the second part, of which is verse 2. It says, he makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters. This is that God wants to give you this peace because it says the sheep will only lie down when they feel safe and provided for. Like that's a very like that's how sheep are. And God, he makes us to lie down, not to control us, but because he knows that we need this rest, just like a shepherd knows when the sheep need rest.
Yeah, and he talks about the still waters, and to be honest, like the green pastures, the still waters, the shepherd's leading them there, but sheep don't like to lay down on their own. And if you guys remember, we cited a book on the 23rd Psalm of one of these authors who was actually a professional shepherd. And there's some great insights on this. I'm going to just share them again. If you were with us on Sunday, you're going to remember this, but you can write these down. But sheep won't rest when they're afraid.
Yeah.
So if they're fearful, and that's like us, if we're anxious and fearful, we don't know how to rest.
That's right. 100%.
If there's tension in the flock, then they won't rest.
What?
Yeah. So
we got tension with somebody, we don't get rest at night?
Yeah. So if the community, your family, work relationships, if there's tension there, we don't rest.
Interesting.
If sheep are bothered by pests, they don't rest. You got any pests?
I don't want to get into that. We're going to keep moving on.
But get rid of the pest, and then you find rest.
There you go. That's good. That's good. Write that down.
And then, and if they're hungry, like if they're anxious about food and I don't have enough, I can't pay my bills, I can't do this. So the provision, they don't rest well if they're hungry. So it's interesting. We're sheep, aren't we?
No doubt. This really lines up right with who we are.
And so, for us, it's the exact same reason. That's why we need a shepherd to say, hey, like you need to rest.
Yeah.
Call the timeout, and it's time to take a rest.
That's so good. So that led us into our last piece, which is he restores my soul, and it's that God's pace heals us from the exhaustion. And Psalms 23:3 says, restores my soul. He leads me into a path of righteousness for his name's sake. So I love that restore, we think about that, it's bringing something back to health. And that's what he's doing for our soul when we get that rest. And it's not just about physical rest, which is an important component, but it's the soul rest that we get. I mean, there's times that I've had 8 hours of sleep and I still didn't feel rested just because my soul was weary. Only God, the good shepherd, can provide us with that soul rest.
And what that might look like in very practical terms is you're just feeling burnout, weary and tired, but you're just like, it doesn't matter how much I lay down, I just don't want to keep going. And so when we follow our own pace, it can lead to burnout. When we follow God's pace, it can lead to a strength that won't wear out, right? And a pace that won't give out. Like we can just keep going. So we have to make sure that God's pace is the best pace.
Yes. So how do we live that out? We talked about that Sunday. Here's some 3 simple shifts that we can do in order to get ourselves in God's pace. The first thing is to choose to make him your shepherd. Like, first and foremost, we have to acknowledge and accept his leadership. Hey, we're the sheep. He's the shepherd. We're going to surrender to his plan.
I think it's that possessive pronoun, my.
Yes.
That's it. Like, is he? Because it's easy to say he's the
good shepherd.
The shepherd of the world, the shepherd of the Bible.
He's the good shepherd.
He's my shepherd.
So once we acknowledge and allow him to be that shepherd over us, a surrender, then we choose to follow him at the pace of his peace, of what he's doing. We start listening when he speaks, when he's telling us, hey, you need to slow down. Hey, you need to say no to that extra thing that's maybe the extra games or the extra invite to this thing or that thing. Listen to God when He speaks to us, and then we allow God to restore our soul, which is letting go of the control. That's really that mindset shift of once we acknowledge He's a shepherd, we're no longer in control, and that's an acknowledgement our minds has to make. We have to literally make to say, nope, God, you're in control. You're the shepherd. I'm going to allow you to be in control.
Do you think maybe if we have a grip so tight on our life, there's just no room for God to get in there?
Yeah.
And so the letting, like if we're needing restoration of the soul, we actually have to loosen the grip.
Yeah.
And just say, okay, God, here's my life.
Yeah, because I mean, he's a good God, and He's not going to force Himself onto us, right?
Yeah.
So that's the point where it's us saying, nope, God, I want to release this control to you because I trust you. It is a trust thing.
So group leaders, maybe a great just question to really get deep in is, where am I running ahead instead of following God's lead? And just maybe that's a good conversation today is where are we pushing ourselves when we really should be leading or following the shepherd? And so instead of pushing, let's follow.
Yep.
I think that's good conversation. I know it's going to require you guys to be honest and open about some areas of your life, but that's what group is all about, is to being transparent and saying, I think I'm in control here and I need to let God be in control here.
Yeah, because the world, tells us, like, it glorifies, our American culture glorifies speed, more productivity, hustle, 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 more accomplishments.
Yeah.
But the shepherd, the good shepherd God, our shepherd's calling us to a different pace, and it's a pace that He's setting for us.
His timing is perfect.
Oh, that's good.
And His rest is real. Like it'll bring such great reward to you. And then His path, it leads to life. Like just follow the shepherd.
So good. All right, group leaders, we're going to hand it back to you guys. We hope that you guys have a great time together. Dive into the scripture, dive into those questions. Have a great session.
Have a great week.